Okay, let's just dive right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack this brilliant, literally life-changing framework developed by Dr. Dacher Keltner. He's a psychology professor at UC Berkeley and the founder of the Greater Good Science Center. Now, somewhere over the last few decades, a really strange thing happened to the way we talk about meaning in our lives. The word purpose essentially got hijacked, right? It became this, I don't know, this corporate buzzword. It's the kind of thing you see printed on a sterile mission statement or slapped onto a whiteboard during a mandatory weekend retreat. And meanwhile, the actual felt experience of a meaningful life, the goosebumps, the tears, that profound sense of being part of something larger than yourself, all of that was just quietly sidelined. Well, today we are bringing that felt experience back into focus. So what is your life's purpose? I mean, really think about it. If hearing that question instantly makes you feel anxious or lost or like you're suddenly wandering around in a dense fog, I really want you to know that you are absolutely not alone. In fact, modern life ties our identities so incredibly tightly to our occupations that this question usually just triggers a wave of panic about our careers. But today, we're going to reframe that entirely. We are going to look at exactly why these feelings of being lost happen in the first place, and much more importantly, how you can use the specific emotion of awe as an everyday tool to find your way back. All right, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll debunk the myth of purpose. Then, we'll reverse engineer your core values, dive into the science of awe, explore the biological powerhouse that is the vagus nerve, and finally, we'll lock it all in with some daily habits. Okay, Section 1. The myth of purpose. Redefining meaning. Modern society has turned purpose into an achievement metric, but decades of science tell us something completely different. And this, right here, perfectly illustrates the core difference. Purpose is not about your career, it's not about what you achieve, it is all about what you are connected to. Look, if purpose were simply about career achievement and hitting that perfect 5-year plan, which, let's be honest, usually just induces panic anyway, then people with the highest salaries and the most prestigious job titles should logically report the absolute highest levels of meaning in life, right? But research consistently contradicts this. It's wild. Once our basic needs are met, income and status are only very weakly correlated with a true sense of meaning. On the flip side of that, you have people in incredibly modest or even really difficult circumstances. We're talking caregivers, community organizers, teachers, artists, and they frequently report profound, deep levels of purpose. Why is that? Well, it's because their daily activities connect them directly to other people, to deep core values, or to something they experience as being so much bigger than their own individual existence. The reframing here is subtle, but it is wildly powerful. Purpose is a relational concept, folks, not an achievement concept. It is so much less about what did I accomplish today and entirely about what am I a part of. It is the literal definition of self-transcendence. So let's get this straight. Feeling lost is a symptom of disconnection. It is not a personality flaw. That vague, unfocused fog you might be feeling right now, it isn't because you aren't trying hard enough or hustling hard enough. When you feel purposeless, you don't typically feel a sharp pain or deep grief. It's more like a diffuseness, Your days just sort of blur together. Your attention scatters across a dozen shallow obligations, and that internal voice that usually asks, "Why am I doing this?" just goes completely quiet. You see, purpose actually acts as a cognitive filtering function. It helps you know which emails actually matter, which relationships to nurture, and which projects truly deserve your energy. When that purpose is absent, absolutely everything feels equally urgent, or worse, equally meaningless. Understanding this diffuseness as a symptom of disconnection, rather than some personal failure, is absolutely vital for your own self-compassion. You do not need to try harder to want something. You just need to reconnect. Moving on to Section 2, reverse engineering your values, the diagnostic. Let's look at how we can actively rebuild that felt sense of connection without needing some drastic, dramatic career change. Rather than giving us abstract self-help fluff or making us write generic words on a whiteboard, Dr. Keltner gives us these 2 deceptively simple diagnostic questions, and they're designed to completely bypass our adult social conditioning. Let's look at the first one. What inspired you as a child? Childhood interests are incredible diagnostic tools because, well, they happened before all those heavy layers of career pragmatism and status-seeking totally took over our brains. Think about a kid who spends hours and hours building these incredibly elaborate structures out of blocks, or organizing all the neighborhood kids into complex games. By the time that kid hits age 35, those pure interests might be totally buried under family expectations or just the pure, exhausting busyness of life. Excavating those early signals isn't about, literally becoming an architect just because you loved blocks as a kid. It's about finding the core strength hidden in that play. Was that fascination really about creativity? Was it about caretaking, problem solving, justice? Those underlying threads almost always persist into adult. And the second step is equally as powerful, asking who inspires you. Because the people we admire function like mirrors for our own latent values. Think about it. We very, very rarely feel deep inspiration from someone whose qualities are completely irrelevant to us. Instead, admiration spotlights traits that we either already possess and want to develop, or traits we deeply, deeply wish we had. If you find yourself incredibly moved by a story of scientific discovery, you are actually signaling a deep internal value around curiosity and truth-seeking. If you are inspired by an athlete who overcame completely impossible odds, you're signaling a value around resilience and discipline. By naming who inspires you, you effectively reverse engineer your own value system. The goal here isn't to find a fancy new job title, it's to find your compass heading, a set of values you can apply to literally any domain of your life, whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, or your 50s.
All right, Section 3, the science of awe, the doorway to connection. Once we actually know our compass heading, how do we efficiently connect to it? Well, the science points us straight to a deeply, deeply underrated emotion.
If purpose is the why of a meaningful life, awe is definitely one of the most efficient hows. Awe is defined as the emotion experienced when we encounter something vast and mysterious that requires accommodation because our current mental models simply aren't big enough to handle it. Now, what's really interesting here is that awe isn't just some poetic luxury. It demands this specific mismatch. For a fleeting moment, you are literally a little too small for what you are looking at. Your brain is forced to step outside of its own ego and realize, wow, the universe is so much larger than my immediate day-to-day anxieties. And vastness isn't just a giant physical cliff face or a starry sky. It is anything that momentarily overwhelms your existing frameworks and completely interrupts your ego-driven to-do list. Yes, for sure, it can be the ocean at night. But vastness can also be complexity, like closing your eyes and listening to a symphony orchestra in full swing. It can be ability, like watching a virtuoso musician or an elite athlete doing something you honestly didn't think was humanly possible, giving you instant full-body goosebumps. It can be moral goodness, too, witnessing an act of extraordinary courage or profound selflessness from a total stranger. Or it can be a vastness of scale in time, like standing in a deeply historic place or just contemplating human evolution. Awe forcefully shifts our focus away from our daily ego-driven maintenance. Worrying about our reputation, optimizing our productivity, constantly comparing ourselves to others on social media. For the few seconds you experience genuine awe, all that self-referential chatter just quiets down, and your attention finally moves outward.
Section 4, the vagus nerve connection, a biological reset. To ground all of this completely in hard science, we have to look at how awe functions not just in our minds, but inside our physical bodies, as an evolutionary tool for human survival. Research shows us time and time again that awe makes you feel simultaneously smaller and more connected. Evolutionary psychologists actually believe awe developed as a kind of biological reset mechanism for group living. Think about it. Early humans survived through cooperation, not through sheer individual strength. Awe actively dissolves the boundary between self-interest and group interest. In the research, this is known as the small self effect. When you feel awe, your sense of your individual ego dramatically shrinks in relative importance, while your sense of connection to humanity, to nature, or to the universe just massively expands. And the biological bridge to this incredible feeling? That's the vagus nerve. This is a literal superhighway inside your body. It's the longest cranial nerve we have, and it runs all the way from the brainstem down through the neck and chest, directly touching the heart, the lungs, and the digestive organs. It is the absolute core of your parasympathetic nervous system, the system responsible for rest and digest, which, by the way, is the exact opposite of the sympathetic nervous system's frantic fight-or-flight mode. Researchers often refer to the vagus nerve as the social engagement nerve. When it's activated, it puts your body into a state that is deeply associated with safety, calm, and bonding. It literally relaxes your facial muscles, it softens your vocal tone, and it calms your nervous system down enough so you can actually attend to another human being, instead of constantly scanning the room for threats. Now, this matters so deeply for your physical health. Awe is not just a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling. It is a low-cost biological necessity. When awe activates that vagus nerve, which, again, you sometimes feel physically as goosebumps, chills, or that deep chest-opening sensation, it triggers some seriously incredible health outcomes. We are talking about a slower heart rate, deeper breathing, lower baseline inflammation, more efficient immune function, and significantly better emotional regulation. Just contrast this for a second with chronic stress, which keeps you trapped in a state of sympathetic activation and elevates all your inflammatory markers, leading to basically every negative health outcome you can think of over time. So awe combined with this calming parasympathetic physiological signature is a legitimate scientifically backed intervention for your physical health. Awe, purpose, and physical calm, they are not three separate topics. They are literally three expressions of the exact same underlying state. Section 5, Daily Habits of Awe, Scaling Down to Reality. Now, you might be sitting there thinking you need to book a flight to the Grand Canyon to get these benefits. But let's look at how incredibly accessible this actually is. 60. That is the number of seconds of intentional attention required every day to start significantly reducing your stress and inflammation. 60 seconds. This is a massive claim, I know, but it's brilliant because it completely lowers the barrier to entry. You absolutely do not need a once-in-a-lifetime astronomical event. You can access awe on a totally ordinary Tuesday while you're waiting for your coffee to brew or just walking from your car to your office building. The examples the researchers use are deliberately mundane. Watching a sunset, listening to a beautiful piece of music, observing the wind blow through the trees. The magic isn't in the object itself. The magic is entirely in the quality of your attention. Most of us experience a sunset peripherally, right? Usually while we're simultaneously scrolling on our phones. The practice here is deliberately stopping, looking directly at it, and letting your attention rest there for just 60 seconds. And notice how this builds up over time. Brief, repeated positive emotional experiences have a cumulative effect on your physiological regulation. Think of it kind of like stretching. Brief, repeated stretches accumulate into vastly improved flexibility over time. No single 1-minute stretch is going to magically transform your entire body, but doing it daily permanently shifts your baseline. Over time, this 60-second habit creates an upward spiral. By activating the parasympathetic system just briefly each day, you shift your body's baseline state toward greater and greater resilience. And psychologically, you completely change your relationship with your own attention. You start to retrain your brain to just naturally notice the spontaneous beauty that was always there, totally unprompted. And the beautiful thing is, the more you notice, the more awe you feel, which just reinforces the habit even further. A great way to put this into action is something called the awe walk. This is such an incredibly democratic tool, and it requires zero money. You simply take a walk you are already going to take anyway. Maybe it's for exercise, maybe it's your commute to work, and you just shift your attention. First, look at the small things, the incredibly intricate patterns of tree bark that you normally just rush right past. Then look at the vast things, the expanse of the sky, the shape of the clouds, the way the light passes through the leaves. The entire goal here is simply to interrupt your internal narration. You know, the one where you're replaying that super awkward conversation from yesterday or mentally writing out tomorrow's exhausting to-do list. Attention research actually shows us that two people can walk the exact same city block, one of them scrolling their phone, the other actively looking at the architecture and the tree canopy, and they will have measurably, completely different emotional and physiological experiences of those exact same 10 minutes. The All Walk just formalizes this into a daily routine that improves your long-term brain health and slashes markers of chronic stress. Section 6. Tying it together. Meaning as a practice. Let's pull all of this together to redefine what it actually takes to live a profoundly meaningful life. Here's the big takeaway. Meaning is not a job you land. It's not a life stage you reach and then just passively possess forever. It is a daily practice. A practice of noticing these simple beauties, the natural world around us, other people, and small everyday acts of kindness. This last one, kindness, is a remarkably reliable trigger for that small self effect we talked about. Researchers often call this moral beauty. When you see someone give up their seat on a crowded bus, or a stranger help someone carry their heavy groceries, you are witnessing something just a little bit larger than ordinary self-interest, made momentarily visible to you. It carries the exact same emotional structure as a breathtaking sunset. It reminds us that awe is woven deeply into ordinary human interaction. You do not need extreme wealth, you don't need endless leisure time, and you certainly don't need exotic travel to build a life of purpose. You just need attention. The simple willingness to slow down, take a breath, and notice the incredible abundance that is already present, but so often obscured by the frantic, chaotic pace of modern life. So, I want to leave you with this final, incredibly important thought. What simple beauty will you notice today? Seriously,